We want to acknowledge the peoples of the Three Fires, the Ojibwa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, on whose land we live and work. The Three Fires peoples are indigenous to this land. We acknowledge our physical location is built on stolen native land. We are therefore guests on this land. We acknowledge the histories and traditions of the people who originate here first and who are still here. We make this land acknowledgement as an important first step. The Grand Rapids, Grand Haven Lakeshore Area Citizens Climate Lobby knows that we need to always engage in the important work of social justice by taking continual steps to learn, honor Indigenous individuals and groups, and honor the land where we do our work.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, for those who may not know me, I am Jan Strait. I am one of the co-leads of the Grand Rapids, Grand Haven chapters. We are combined. We combined a little over a year ago. And so many of our decisions are between our leads. We have actually 9 leads and 2 liaisons, and so a large group of people, and we will be going through the reporting system so that you will see what all these people do. I'm just going to quickly introduce some of our leads that are here. And just raise your hand. First was Chris, who just did our land acknowledgement. She also does our IT and all those invites, those messages you got. Most of them are all from Chris. And also is part of the newsletter team and communication aspect of it. So, John Constein? He raised his hand on the other way. Okay, not the other way. So Dolly, here's Dolly. She'll be giving a report to David. That's David Crandall. Okay, Patty. Patty is from Grand Haven. Kelly. Kelly is a liaison for the lobby. She'll be reporting for us. And who am I missing? Is there anybody else here I'm missing for leads?
David.
David, I already did David. Yeah. Okay, good. We have a couple of people missing from the standpoint they're traveling and just are not here to be present. So let's move on. We have some visitors. We have some new people that have this is their first time to join us. Carolyn, well, you want to just say hi? You're going to be reporting in a minute, probably. So
Hi.
Roger, you've attended before, or is this your first meeting to attend?
No, I've attended a couple of them.
Oh, okay. Glad to have you here. Who else am I missing? That we've got a couple of people that we haven't seen for a while, but certainly Barbara Hanson. This is probably one of your first meetings. You're muted, so everybody's muted. So yeah.
My first meeting.
Yeah, good. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And some of the people are visitors, and so Carol Walker, you're visiting tonight, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, welcome.
I'm with the Saginaw Midland Bay chapter.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Good. Glad that that you got the message to come. Kenneth, you're visiting, right?
Yes, I'm not sure if I attended one of these before. It might have been something similar, but I think this is my first time.
Okay, well, good. We welcome you. And who am I missing? Gloria, I know that you're visiting. As this was, you want to say anything, Gloria?
No, you're right. I'm visiting. Can't wait to hear Maya speak.
Okay, yes, she has been pushing Green Amendment. Gloria has been great about this signing up for Green Amendment initiatives through the GRCC. That's Grand Rapids Climate Coalition. Okay, and Amy, you've attended before, haven't you? Is this your second meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is. Yep. I'm excited to
Okay,
hear her
good.
speak also.
Okay, good. All right. Well, if I missed anybody, Matthew, it looks like Matthew, are you, you know, if Matthew's able to speak, okay. Well, you're welcome, Matthew. Glad to have you here. And I think everybody else are basically CCL members and have been here for quite a while, at least. And I'm glad to see you all.
Kimmy has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kimmy. Yes, I missed you. You're visiting.
Well, this is my first meeting. I'm part of the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition and the Creston Neighborhood Association. And I just thought, I really needed to get more up to speed on the Green Amendment. Our board has already approved when I go door to door, I can carry the petition and get people to sign it. So I need to get like more with it.
Okay, well, good. We're glad you're here. Okay. And I didn't recognize, of course, so everybody else, they've really are active members in CCL. So guys, I'm just really glad that you've taken time to be here tonight with us very much. All right, we're going to move on. First, before we move on, a couple of housekeeping things. We move quickly through the meeting. So if you're visiting and you have a chance to see how we're structured as chapters, and if you have any comments or you put it in the chat, and we do have somebody that monitors that and watches it, and at the end can say whatever you have or questions about it, we can address them at the end. As we move through the reports and announcements, there really isn't any much discussion, okay? So that's why we do comments in the chat. So you will be kept muted for that reason. So that way we keep the silence of the background noise, because this is recorded. And often many people ask me if they have to cut out early or they miss parts. This is always in our newsletter that comes out the first of the month. The recording for the prior meeting is in the newsletter. So if you want to listen to it again, or you have other people that missed parts of it and really want to refer back to it, so you'll be able to find it in the newsletter. All right. And all the links of the announcements are saved in the chat. So you want to know, where do I find that they just talked about? It will be in a chat, in a list in the chat as a list. Okay. I think I've covered it all. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and start with screens for reporting on the structure of our chapter. The first line there, our CCL National Focus, just lists the 4 areas that CCL focuses on. That's carbon pricing, clean energy permitting reform, electrification, and healthy forests. And right now we have a 5th one that we are focused on for the election of 2024. And so there's going to be further information coming out. How does CCL participate in activities for the election, because we are very strictly nonpartisan. And so, but there are certain activities that we can do that are going to be beneficial for the election process. So I'm going to call on Kelly, and I don't know, maybe Patty too, to do the report for our lobby team, this is the federal part of it that represents District 3 with Representative Hillary Colton. Kelly?
Sure. Thanks, Jan. Hi, everyone. So just a brief update on where we are with lobbying. So I shared in our last meeting that our last lobby conversation was in November with Representative Skolton's office. And I just wanted to share that one of the 3 asks we made, Representative Skolton has since signed on as a co-sponsor, and that's the RISE or RISI. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Act. So she signed on as a co-sponsor on January 30th. So I thought that was just encouraging news to be able to see that, you know, within 2 to 3 months of our conversations with her office, that she did sign on to that. As far as looking forward, our next action in March, we are planning to do a kind of drop-in with Representative Skolton's office. So from the CCL national level, they are focusing on the Conservative Climate Leadership Conference in March, which we are not a part of. So instead, we'll be making contact with our member of Congress's office by dropping off some sort of either material, or it might be like letters from constituents. We're still working out the details, but really just another way to make sure they know we're here, we're present, and continue, you know, strengthening that relationship with them.
Okay. All right, let's move to John Constantine. You have comments to make from the state actions and local actions?
Yes, the key focus at present is trying to push at the state level community-owned solar legislation, which didn't pass last year. We're expected to come back to the table after the by-elections at the end of the month, which will restore 2 seats. Rachel Hood is leading the charge in it. She's both local and across the state. All organizations in the area probably going to meet towards the end of this month with Rachel before meeting to work out the best way to go. We would expect to be meeting with local state representatives in the area. CCL across the state are invited to meet with their local representatives because CCL fully supports this legislation. And we submitted an article to Holland Sentinel, which will come out next month, on community solar as well.
Okay. Anything else? Is that it on the state and local?
Remind me of things that you think I should be doing. I've forgotten.
I think you did it. I mean, if there's anything else.
I think,
Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Our second major team is grassroots, and grassroots is made up of 4 different committees. The first one is the tabling committee. Right now during February and March is a quiet time. We did have a tabling at work, but in January, but we have now formed a committee. So Kathy, Shirley, and Rebecca. Rebecca is brand new, and she's off on a trip to Mexico right now. But they will be working on organizational aspects of tabling and being able to cover the multiple festivals and things that happen in the area, starting pretty much from April through September. So that's what that committee works on. EJ committee, Dolly?
Yes, I think we have 3 things that are coming up for March. We will be setting up a tour of Diatribe here in town and the building that they have just started remodeling, and excited about that. We also just started talking with C4 about working on a pocket forest with them. So we are going to need some volunteers to help plant trees and other things like that to transform part of the southeast side. And we are continuing with the article every month in the newsletter that has to do with the BIPOC community and environmental justice that's being done.
Did you want to mention the book study, or is it too late to get into that?
I don't think it's too late. And I have
Actually, registration is closed.
Okay,
Oh.
it is too late, but we aren't done with the book discussion yet. We've got one more session next Wednesday. So.
Okay. All right. And the book we are doing, I don't know if you can see it, it's Becoming Kin. It's an excellent book. If you haven't read it, even though you haven't registered for the book study, it is actually a great read. So, and that is by Krawick. So we've had some good discussion, good petition. Yeah. Climate Action Program. This is now been taken over by Carolyn. And Carolyn's going to make making a statement, kind of introduce herself.
Hi, nice to see everybody. Like Jan said, my name is Carolyn. I'm brand new with CCL, and it looks like I'm going to be keeping an eye on our action tracker, on our monthly calls to action via email and phone. So I'll be reporting back to everyone on how we're doing with that. And it looks like I'm coming in at a good time, because the last couple of months have been our best months as far as members responding and emailing their elected officials since last June and July. This month, the focus is on the Farm Bill, and it looks like we're at 50 actions in our chapter, which looks to be pretty good. And I'll be working with Jan to get going on being able to thank people directly when they take action.
Good, thanks
Sound
much.
good? Miss anything?
We really appreciate it. And there also will be a notice in the newsletter. So all of you that are members and with CCL, you get emails. I think it's like the second week of the month that is titled Brett Cease of CCL. And that is actually an easy way to take action, because he has a link right in the email you can click on, and you can write on whatever is pertinent. It changes every month on what legislative piece at a federal level that is CCL wants us to focus on and contact our legislative people. And so it's been an important process, and we're doing super. Last month, as Carolyn alluded to, we had 90 people take action. That is fantastic. And so I encourage all of you, either if you can't find the Brett Cease email, that's perfectly fine. We have another announcement later on a screen. We'll show the actual site, also the site of where you can go in and take action too. This is important stuff. It only takes 2 minutes, and it really makes a difference. If you can't do anything else, do this, okay? Next one is Activation Committee by David. David, do you have anything you want to say?
Nothing in particular. We're having another activation meeting on the 25th, and Kelly has kindly offered to host that at her home. I don't know how many people have signed up for that, but this is a regular thing that we're doing. I'm hoping to do another one in April where we get new members to come and meet others and just have a good time in a relaxed atmosphere and talk about what they might be able to do personally that fits within their lifestyle and isn't too overwhelming, but it gives them a little place where they can contribute to the cause. So that's something that we do maybe 7 or 8 times a year.
So if you haven't, if you are interested in that, please put your name in the chat, and are a member or want to become a member. That's really easy. You just join on our national site of citizensclimatelobby.org. There's no obligation. It just means that then you're connected with our chapter. And then you can attend some of these activation and some of these other things. Okay, thanks, David. Grass Tops is basically a group that represents a number of different disciplines within our society. And we met just a couple of weeks ago. We meet on a quarterly basis. And our next meeting is May 6th. If you're new and you're very interested in wanting to figure out or know what does Grass Tops do, how do we meet and focus on, put your name in the chat, and you are welcome to come and just observe a meeting. We have some really wonderful people in the team and doing some good work in various ways throughout the community. And so it is a good way to be connected and see what's happening. So, okay. Media is divided up into two divisions, broadcasting, and then we also have publication under it. Publication's a tough one that we have, it's been a long time for us to get anywhere on publication within this area from the standpoint of the media option. But David has been working on broadcasting, and I'm gonna, David, you want to say make any comments about that?
Yeah, we recently had some good progress in that. I've been trying to broker a connection between three new members, including Amy, who's here. And I think, I'm not sure if the other two are here, Jordan and Dennis, but or Kevin. But anyway, they constitute a ready-made kind of media team with video and writing press releases and coordinating with the meteorologists in our immediate area. And we have gotten the okay from the meteorologists. They're ready to take things. And what we're doing is, in cases where the meteorologists do not have the ability to cover a certain event, they are kind of willing to delegate that to this team that we're making to take videos at a certain place, to write press releases about it, supply the meteorologists with that material, and then they can make a segment out of it without having to send their own cameramen or camera people and writers. So I'm hopeful. We have not yet done a project, but I'm hopeful within the next month we will have tried that out and see how it works. And that would go out to 8 meteorologists who are in Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids, Western Michigan. And hopefully that we would then be able to contribute to their programming in that way on climate-related issues.
Thank you, David. This is something that's really exciting. I mean, thank you for those who have said yes to be a part of this group and what they're working on, and a whole different area that we have not explored before. So, man, thank you to David for taking this on. Social media, as you can see, it says help wanted. This is really a moving piece. You can see what's listed there with X, Facebook, Instagram. We do have a few people that are involved with it, but we always need more help, particularly Facebook. It doesn't, that doesn't seem to be as appealing for posting. It's really a solo kind of job. It's just posting different things that are interrelated to definitely, of course, under CCL or climate change and issues. CCL has a training on it. There's areas that you know how to follow what CCL is all about, but there's always open for help on the social media aspect of it. So, okay. Next. Chapter development is really is made up, you can see, of 5 different groupings of within our structure. The steering committee is really the organizational management group made up of all our co-leads and our leads of our different groups. We meet once a month and just look at what's happening in the chapter, any decisions we have to be made on direction and that kind of thing, and strategy. Program committee meets sometimes like quarterly or less. We met just last week and we finished scheduling programs for 2024. This is super that we have topics and people that we want to bring in for speaking in 2024. The other big thing that you're going to see, there's one other screen that will mention it, but program committee is going to be coordinating with the tabling committee and probably a couple other pieces of the grassroots team about writing postcards to under the environmental voter project, which are really centering on people who are registered to vote, call themselves environmentalists, but don't vote. And this has been a successful program in several states across the country during election period of time. And we're taking it on with the direction of the state CCL and national CCL as volunteers to do a postcard push. And so you're going to hear more about that, that part. The onboarding meet and greet is very much the same of the activation thing that David already talked about in the event coming up on February 25th. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and put your name in the chat, and Kelly and David and one of the people will be in touch with you. Communications is newsletter, it's communications of all the emails that come out to you, giving you information about the meetings coming up. It's all other kinds of various communications. And this is made up of a team of people, of Chris and Dennis and Deanna and Julie right now, and doing good work in getting our newsletter out on a monthly basis. And it comes out always on the first of the month. Now we're going to go, this is a side piece, the financial report that John's going to do. We rarely ever talk about finances. We don't ask for money. People always wonder, how do we operate? Well, we're getting short on money because the expenses are increasing, and we thought that we put this out there. It's just a matter of donation, and that's how we do it. And John, do you want to speak to it at all?
This represents money that flows to our CCL account. A lot of stuff is in kind. People donate space. People drive to DC but don't ask for gas money. People pay for someone else's expense on the edge. Example, our copying is done by Fountain Street Church in kind. But this is the cash flow that we have. 2023 compared to 2024, membership fees go up a bit. The June conference scholarship is when we've historically brought mostly students to Washington, DC, the national conference. It's a win-win all the way around. Tabling honorarium, space rental. And another one this time would be EVP postcards. We've committed to writing 1,000 postcards. They will come to us free. Postcard costs 50 cents to mail nowadays, so that's $500. So we have a balance still of $713, but we need more money. How to do it? Email CC Grand Rapids or contact me. As the spirit moves you, you do not need to pay dues to be part of this organization. Money is always a question, but it's never a problem.
Thank you, John. And one of the membership fees there, you see $250. That is West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. I'm going to come right out and say it. We buy the membership so our members can go to the events and get the reduction in the lunch. And we opened this up to do this several years ago. We felt that it was good to encourage people because it's a wonderful organization. You learn a great deal at these luncheons on what's happening in businesses, manufacturing, organizations across the board in our communities. And it's very important networking, and they not only learn about us, but we learn a great deal about whatever is going on and what's being presented. So we stepped out and started paying this larger amount of sum, but you can see it went from 2023 from $100, now it's $250. So a little bit increase. I'd say that a little bit high inflation, right? Percentage factor there, but we still feel that it's worth it to encourage people to go. So that I just wanted to explain that. So everything else is pretty much logical. Okay. Michigan Green Amendment training of February 26th. This is a statewide training that you can learn more. The site is in the chat to be able to check it out. Should be very informational, and certainly our talk tonight, you'll learn some of it, but this would also add just the depth to it. Michigan has a meet coming up on line 5 for February 29th, 5 to 6:30. Also, it's listed in the chat on how do you get to this. Very, very important information. This is critical on line 5. If you don't know enough about it yet, good way to learn. Those who were able to attend the Troubled Water movie had an introduction to it. Certainly, there's lots we can do to take action on this part of it and protecting our waters. Conservative conference, it's already been mentioned. We do have a fairly decent sized conservative group within CCL on a national level, and they have their own conference. And this is the dates in DC. That means that they are lobbying primarily the Republicans on the issues that we support and the legislation that we support as CCL. Our next chapter meeting, Soil Health with Dr. George Bird. He's emeritus professor from MSU. Bruce Odom was able to track him down and get the information. He's going to be very interesting, particularly for those of us who have been reading the book in regards to the indigenous, approach with land. He lives and breathes and just the importance of soil health, lists it as one of the top things that we should be concerned about. And then the last one there, I've already spoken to. The postcard writing is going to be happening at tabling at events. And our September meeting, we are going to be having it add in a place like WEMIAC most likely, and be totally focused on doing these postcards and getting them out. And there's going to be that, and by September, the absentee ballots will be going out for the general election, but we will also be pushing for postcard before the primary in August. So there's going to be two major dates that we're pushing on this, and various groups. We're asking also if you've got faith groups that you are connected with that would be willing to do this, or any other kind of organizations that would be like to be involved in this postcard writing on this environmental voter project. So, okay, I think that's about it. Maybe we have one more, don't we, Chris? Yeah, this is our final one. This is basically what Carolyn, it's not Caroline, it's Carolyn, spoke to, that our CCL action right now is focused on the Farm Bill, but the Farm Bill has a portion in it that is $20 billion that is going to be going to forestry. And there's a script in it. When you click on that cclusa.org, take -action, we'll show you the information. We'll give you all kinds of information about this legislative piece. And it's really important. So time to get out there and write your legislative about this. And really important about the forestry part, okay? Because we want the money going to in the right way. That, I believe, is it for our announcements. I think, Dolly, were you keeping track at all on the chat? Anything that anyone brought up that was concerns or questions on the chat?
I think I have answered a couple, and I think David's in charge of chat tonight.
Oh, yeah, okay, David's in charge. All right, got it mixed up.
Also, so I think,
Well, I've been looking at the chat, and there's nothing that needs to be brought up to the meeting, so.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right, so now we are ready for our speaker.
She's not here yet. She is coming.
She's coming. Okay.
Yep.
A couple of things then in regards to while we're waiting for her to come in. I was rushing there because I wasn't sure if she was in on some of the things on the announcements. Just to see, anything else that we might have missed or any questions? This gives you an opportunity to raise any questions while she's not here. You can just unmute yourself and open up.
One thing in the chat, they're asking, we've gotten a couple of inquiries about how to donate to our local chapter. And I'm thinking maybe John Considine can give his email out.
Okay. Yeah, John. Either put your address in there or your email address so people have that. And then they can get in touch with you.
It's there now.
It's there? Okay.
Yeah, I'll put my address in too if you want to send a check.
So John and I sort of co-do the finances under the steering committee. So, but I let it so you all know that there's other people watching the finances. John's just not taking his money. So, Bruce, okay, you got your hand up.
Yeah, the date, location, and time of the luncheon that we're all paying the $250 a year dues for, the coalition.
It comes out as an email as West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I can't speak to what exact week they have it because it varies. And we may need to, we try to put it in the newsletter when we know what is happening. It might be now that we should get more on top of that and make sure that we do have it in the newsletter and we have communication from them so you know when it is. And it varies from place to place. It's never at the same place and the date varies. So that's not a very good answer.
Okay, no, I'm acquainted. I missed the name of the organization. I'm sorry. I thought it was somebody else. So I used to be a member, and so all we have to do is say we're with CCL and we can come in and sit down for free.
Well, yeah, if you want to have lunch, you got to pay for lunch, but you have a reduced amount. Okay, you don't have to pay the full.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. There is no free lunch in life, Jen.
No, there's no free lunch. That's right. Yeah. In fact, I think Julie just put it in the chat under the actual event page, so you can look it up. So you know which the next time is
great.
and what their focus is.
Thank you.
Yeah, they do good programs across the board on all the variety of what they present.
Yeah, they bring in industry and sometimes pretty sizable companies, and that's a powerful thing to do.
Right. Right. And usually they break it up in the meeting. There's usually 2 or 3 different focuses of people, depending on what the theme of the meeting is. You know, so it's a variety of people that are speaking. So
Maya has joined us, Jan.
okay, good. Thanks for telling me. Hi, Maya. See, okay. All right. So I'm going to, Maya, we are honored and we welcome you to have you speak. We have a lot of people here that are actually visitors for us. They've come to hear you. You are, the reason that they came. And they really want to know more about the Green Amendment and the details of it and how we can move forward on this. Okay, so I'll let you turn it. I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, that's very kind of you to say, and it's very kind of everybody to show up, whether you're new or not new. But I am a little bit honored that for people who just showed up just because I was here. So hopefully it'll be worth it. But I'm really pleased to be here. Sorry for my techno hiccup. I'm not a super techno person, but anyway, it was all about links. So you just really quickly. So for those of you who maybe don't know who I am, my name is Maya van Rossum. I'm the founder of the National Green Amendments for the Generations movement. I wrote 2 books titled The Green Amendment. There's one of them right there. I coined this term Green Amendment a number of years ago, but I've also served for the last 30 years as the Delaware Riverkeeper and leader of a 4-state organization called the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. And really, I think that that's the most important thing I want you to know about me going into this talk is that I have been an environmental attorney and activist for over 30 years. And it's as a result of that 30 years of activism and legal work that I've come to experience the myriad of ways our current system of environmental protection laws fundamentally fails us. And, really to determine that we need a better path forward when it comes to environmental protection. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about. But I do want to acknowledge that what brought me to this auspicious group is a very key leader and partner in our Michigan work, Chris, where did you go, Chris? She was just on the screen. Who really has been part of our Michigan leadership team and said, hey, Maya, I think I have a group that would be really interested to hear from you. So Chris Barsy-Eckman, and in case you didn't know her full name. And so I really just want to thank Chris for bringing me here. I want to thank Jan for having me here. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us. So let's jump in. And I know this is a climate group, so I have a little bit of a climate bent, but the fact of the matter is, this really is about addressing all environmental issues, one of which, of course, is the climate crisis. And as people in Michigan and beyond are struggling with what to do about the climate crisis, what to do about the various devastating environmental harms that we really are experiencing across the nation, inevitably the question comes forth at one point or another, like, what is the thing that I should be doing? How should I be spending my time? What is that one thing that's going to make a difference? And the truth is, there is no one thing, right? We all need to continue to do all of the good things that we're doing to address all of these issues, including the climate crisis. We need to be protesting. We need to be advocating. We need to be testifying in public hearings and private spaces. We need to be litigating. We need to be voting better people into office. There is no one panacea for the challenges that we're facing. We really need to be doing all of it. But one thing that people often don't think about, which I think is an essential part of the solution, is that amongst the things we need to be doing is we need to be working to transform our system of laws and governance in states across our nation and at the federal level when it comes to environmental protection, environmental justice, and climate protection. And to transform our system of laws and governance, I don't mean let's just pass another law. Let's just do another one. Because the truth is, there is no one law here in the US that can solve our problem, right? First off, there is no law that could anticipate every scenario where we need additional protection, every unknown technology or emerging contaminant, or every specific condition and in every location across the state of Michigan or across the nation. It's really literally impossible to conceive of everything and cover it in another law the way our laws work, which are very specific. But more than that, while there isn't, again, one law that could, the way, laws have a lot of detail in them. More than there just not being one more law that's going to make a difference is part of the problem is that here in the United States of America, in the state of Michigan, the way our laws work is they really presume that environmental pollution, degradation, and harm is appropriate, is legitimate, is needed, should be permitted, right? Everything, when you read the laws as written, they really are focused on legalizing environmental pollution and degradation and harm. They're not really focused on preventing it first, because there is this presumption that if you're an industrial operator who wants to or a developer or somebody who wants to undertake an action or activity that's going to be harmful to the environment, there's a presumption that you should be allowed to do it. It's just a matter of doing the right reviews and the right permits and the right management, and all will be fine. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't always work, right? We really should start from a place of prevention. We shouldn't presume pollution and degradation is appropriate. We should start from a place that presumes that it's not, but that's not the way the laws work in Michigan or beyond. In the laws that we have in the state and nationwide, there are lots of gaps and loopholes. Sometimes by accident, because there's an emerging contaminant or a new technology that the law could not anticipate. And, it takes time to catch up and pass the laws and the regulations to catch up with the new technology. But sometimes it's by design. Sometimes industry is able to come in and carve out a little loophole that gives them an exception from protections and regulations. And so there are lots of things in our laws in Michigan and nationwide that are just not addressed by the system of laws and regulations that we have. Unfortunately, whether it's intentional or unintentional, by accident or by design, it kind of doesn't matter. Well, it does matter if it's intentional, right? But the outcome of environmental racism is alive and well in the United States of America, including in Michigan. We have communities of color and indigenous communities, low-income communities that are consistently targeted for highly polluting industrial operations, and as a result, suffer from greater exposure to the devastations of pollution of all kinds, air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, and to degradation of the environment. They get robbed of their healthy ecosystems before others across the state. And as a result, communities of color, indigenous communities, and low-income communities suffer much more greatly to the ravages of environmental pollution and degradation. And sometimes it is absolutely intentional, and it is absolutely by design. And sometimes it's the way the laws work, that they sort of direct you to these communities that are already overburdened. However it is that it's happening, the ramification is significantly more impact, suffering, and harm to these environmental justice communities. In our system of laws and governance in Michigan and beyond, children really are an afterthought, right? Children suffer so much more deeply and intensely to lower levels of pollution and environmental degradation than the adults in our communities. And yet that heightened sensitivity is not really considered, and certainly is not protected in the ways our laws are, in the way our laws are written and are implemented. In this system of laws, legislators and regulators generally are the ones who decide. Even if you have a law that talks about protecting clean water, they're the ones who get to decide how clean is clean. In the laws they pass, the regulations they write up, the decisions they make about permitting, whether or not they decide to enforce an existing law on the books, that gets left to government officials. There really isn't an equal space or place in this system for the people who are suffering as a result of the decisions that these people are making. And in this system of laws and governance, people of wealth and at high levels in industry have much greater access to the levers of power than the rest of us. That's one of the reasons why we get those gaps and loopholes, right? It's one of the reasons why existing laws, even strong ones, don't get enforced or maybe get rolled back when there's a change in politics. And so as a result, we have people across Michigan, across the nation, who continue to suffer from environmental pollution, degradation, and harm. And of course, we are facing a climate crisis. And so we need to deal with this set of problems. We need to transform this system of laws and governance so that it truly does provide the opportunity to protect our environment and our people the way we need them protected. And that's what green amendments are. Green amendments bring forth the kind of change we need to make a dramatic difference in one fell swoop over all of the aspects of this system of laws and governance. A green amendment is a constitutional environmental rights amendment that meets key criteria, including that it's language that's added to the Bill of Rights section of our state constitutions. And literally, as a result of those key criteria, the right language and the right placement gives our rights to a clean, safe, and healthy environment highest constitutional recognition, standing, and protection. When we pass a green amendment and add it to the state constitution, we empower both the law and we empower the people in the state. When it comes to the law, we do lift up our environmental rights, so they are given the same highest constitutional standing recognition and protection as all those other fundamental rights we hold dear. We all know how powerfully the right to free speech and freedom of religion, how powerfully the right property rights, how powerfully the right to bear arms are protected in our state, in our states, and at the federal level, because they are recognized and protected in the Bill of Rights section of our state constitutions. and our federal constitution. Well, when we pass the Green Amendment and we put environmental rights into this same section of the Constitution, using that carefully crafted language, we give our environmental rights this same most powerful legal recognition, protection, and standing. I say to people, we all know how powerfully those other fundamental rights are protected. Well, now that same power comes to bear for the environment. When we have a Green Amendment added to our state constitutions, all government officials in the state, from the local town council to the state legislature to the governor's office, all the regulatory agencies, they all become constitutionally bound to protect the environmental rights of all the people and the natural resources of the state. And they must protect those rights and they must protect those resources equitably for all people. It's a powerful pathway for ending environmental racism and injustice, because now we all have the same constitutional right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. And again, all government officials must protect our environmental rights and our natural resources equitably, regardless of race, ethnicity, tribal affiliation, wealth, gender, geography, or generation. When we have a well-framed and placed Green Amendment, or well-framed and properly placed Green Amendment, climate protection and generational justice become constitutional mandates. Every time government acts, they must ensure that these fundamental rights now recognized in the Constitution are being protected. When we have a Green Amendment, we reorient government so they are focused on preventing pollution, degradation, and harm first, not simply adding to the end of the process and saying, how are we going to accept it and permit it? Because when we the people have a constitutional entitlement and government has a constitutional obligation to protect that entitlement, when they're going through the work, right, of passing legislation or regulations or permitting, they have to be thinking right from the get-go, how do I ensure that this law I pass or I interpret and I implement, how do I ensure I do all of this in a way that fulfills my obligation as a government official to protect the environmental rights of the people, right? If you have a right to free speech and a state legislator is about to pass a law that and they write up their law and they send it to their staffer, and their staffer comes back and says, hey, wait a second, you passed this law, it's going to infringe on the constitutional right to free speech. Right from the get-go, the legislator says, oh my goodness, I have a constitutional duty. If I do that, I'm subject to legal challenge. My whole law can be overturned. I'm going to remedy that problem before it even starts, before this law comes, even gets proposed and out of committee, right? It's that kind of reorientation because you've lifted up the profile of environmental rights to this highest standing. So government officials really from the get-go are obliged to ensure that they are focused on how do I protect these rights while I'm doing my work as a government official, because it's part of their it's part of their oath of office. With a Green Amendment in the state constitution, all the legal protections that are already on the books get strengthened. It's not that the right to pure water, clean air, safe climate, healthy environment wipes away all the laws on the books. No, they're already there, right? They're there, but now they're strengthened because now as those laws are being interpreted and applied by government officials, they're now being interpreted through this lens of, okay, this law must be interpreted and implemented in a way that fulfills the constitutional obligation to protect the environmental rights of the people and to protect the natural resources generationally. So all those laws, how clean is clean, right? Now has a constitutional overarching lens on it, which really strengthens how those laws are interpreted and applied. It becomes a really powerful foundation for positive progressive laws. So we have good government officials. They see a problem in the laws that exist. Either there's a gap or perhaps those laws as being written and implemented are creating a problem. Well, now there's a real powerful constitutional foundation on which good government officials can be advancing good, strong, progressive laws to address those existing gaps, loopholes, or problems. But also just the language itself fulfills a lot of the gaps, loopholes, and problems, because one of the benefits of having a green amendment is it's what we call self-executing, meaning it has legal life and strength in its own right. So you don't have to find, if you don't have a law that implements the rights articulated in the Green Amendment in a particular circumstance or context, right? You're looking at a problem with clean water or the overburdening of a community of color, and there is no existing law that addresses that problem. Well, you know what? That's okay. You can turn to your constitutional entitlement to a clean, safe, and healthy environment as articulated in that Green Amendment language. Grab hold of that and use that in your advocacy and, if necessary, in legal actions to get the protection you need, because it's a constitutional right that already belongs to you, and it is self-executing. So even if there's a gap in the law or there's a loophole in the law that doesn't solve your problem, you can turn right to the Constitution to try and solve that problem. One of the values of a Green Amendment is, right, the goal is really to get our government officials to render better decisions in the first place. But part of the reality of a Green Amendment is if our government officials fundamentally fail us, we can get access to the courts to try to make it right. Now, a Green Amendment is not just about strengthening the law. It is also about empowering people, empowering activists, because now when we each go forth doing our work to defend the environment that we love, to defend the people we love, we are not just fighting for people and the environment, we are fighting for a constitutional right, this legal entitlement under the Constitution that belongs to us. This is incredibly empowering to activists, right? It makes us stand firmer and stronger and be prouder, because now we are fighting for this constitutional right that even when people on the other side of the aisle, if they don't agree with us about whether or not the water should be protected or the air should be protected, they know that we are not just fighting for the water and the air, we are fighting for this constitutional entitlement in this document that lays this out as a fundamental right that belongs to we the people. And here in the United States of America, even when people disagree with you, if you are fighting for a constitutional entitlement, they look at you differently. They receive your message differently, because this is a fundamental legal right that belongs to you, that you are arguing for. So activists themselves, stand firmer and are intellectually and emotionally empowered just because they know they're fighting for a constitutional right, but they also know that everybody out in the world is viewing them differently, because they are now patriots that are rising up to defend the Constitution of their state. And that's really powerful. Every time an activist gets up to testify at a public hearing or speak at a private meeting, first words that come out of your mouth, I have a right to clean air and clean water, a safe climate, and healthy environments. It really makes a difference. I've seen it. The Green Amendment movement is a nationwide movement, right? We are going state where the states are leading. We're going state by state by state, getting these green amendments, because in the environmental legal world, the states have a tremendous amount of power. They have a lot of power when it comes to environmental protection. The federal government has a lot of power too. Sometimes they overlap, but very often they're different. Very often the federal government will set the floor below which you can't go in terms of protection, but the states are allowed to do more and allowed to do better when it comes to the environment. So there's a lot of authority at the state level when it comes to environmental protection. And that's why we need to go into every single state and get a constitutional green amendment. So all government officials within that state are constitutionally obliged to protect our environmental rights. But there are going to be gaps and loopholes in that protection, because there's a lot of power the federal government has. So we need a federal green amendment too, right? We don't need one or the other. We need them both. The state green amendment to handle state and local government officials, the federal green amendment to handle federal officials, the president, the Congress, the EPA, and so on. But we're starting at the states because constitutional amendments happen with quite regularity at the state level and are pretty accessible. So we know that we can achieve this in more of a near-term fashion. It's not that it's going to be easy. It's going to take time, but we can get it sooner. And the truth is as we're doing the work of getting our state green amendments, getting them, educating the communities, getting people engaged, and ultimately getting them passed, we are laying that foundation of knowledge and understanding and enthusiasm for this green amendment approach that we're going to need to eventually get a green amendment at the federal level. Right. So we start at the states and then we go to the federal level, and it won't be too far off that we go look for a federal amendment. At this point, there are green amendments in 3 states: Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York. New York was just secured 2 years ago. But we have green amendment proposals already put forth in about 14 other states with nearly half a dozen more on the way. And amongst those that are more on the way is the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan is about to have a green amendment proposal, we believe, and the language is really powerful and really meaningful. And who knows, if Michigan gets its act together, maybe Michigan could be the 4th state in the nation to have a constitutional green amendment. Now, this is what we're talking about for Michigan. This is actually the language that Chris and I and others are working towards. It would add to the Bill of Rights section of the state constitution as section number 29, the following language: every person has an inherent and inalienable right to a clean and healthy environment, including clean water, air, and soils, balanced ecosystems, a stable climate, and the preservation of the natural, cultural, recreational, and healthful qualities of the environment. The state, including each branch, agency, and political subdivision, shall take no action that would infringe on these rights and shall protect these rights equitably for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomics, or geography. This state's natural resources, including but not limited to surface water, groundwater, wetlands, ecosystems, air, native flora and fauna, soils, and climate, are the common property of all the people, including both present and future generations. This state, including each branch, agency, and political subdivision, shall serve as trustee of these resources and conserve, protect, and maintain these resources for the benefit of all the people. The inalienable rights and trustee responsibilities recognized in this section may be directly invoked and enforced by the people of this state. That last sentence is about the amendment being self-executing. But we had to add a little bit extra to the Michigan Green Amendment, because in Michigan, there's already Article 4, Section 52 of the state constitution, which sounds like it might be a Green Amendment, but isn't. First off, it's in Article 4, not the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, that placement brings incredible legal obligations and power, just that placement. So placing language lower down in the Constitution doesn't bring with it that same legal cachet. But also the language and the goals of Article 4, Section 52 are different, both as written and as applied. So if we just take away the first sentence, the underlined portion, the way Article 4, Section 52 read was the conservation, pollution, impairment, destruction. I must have done some sort of typo there. The conservation and development of the natural resources of the state are hereby declared to be of paramount public concern in the interest of the health, safety, and general welfare of the people. That sounds good. The legislature shall provide for the protection of the air, water, and natural resources of the state from pollution, impairment, and destruction. What that says is, yes, the environment's really important, but how the environment gets protected is left to the state legislature. So if the state legislature doesn't take meaningful action to protect the environment, bummer for you, because the Constitution says that they're the ones who get to decide. That it's not that the people get to decide. This is not a right of the people. This is actually an obligation of legislators to legislate, which is what they're supposed to do anyway. And as long as they legislate, for the most part, they've complied with the Constitution. So our Green Amendment creates something different and more powerful. It creates a right that actually belongs to the people. It's not just up to the legislature or the regulators to decide how clean is clean, but if they pass a law and that law is implemented, results in significant failings when it comes to environmental protection, and we, the people, can show that we've suffered harm up to that constitutional level, we can take action on that Green Amendment language to actually challenge what the government is and or is not doing. So what had to be, though, added to Article 4, Section 52 to make sure that it couldn't be used in some way to sort of weaken our new language, we had to add this subject to Article 1, Section 29, right? So that means Article 1, Section 29 stands, and then this other beautiful language is sort of subservient to or in support of, but does not displace. So that was really important adjustment that had to happen in Michigan because of that pre-existing language. When it all comes down to it, I'm not going to read you the section of my book where this is actually a quote from, but the fact of the matter is that pure water, clean air, a safe climate, and healthy environments, these are entitlements of we the people. These are inherent, inalienable, indefeasible rights that belong to us by virtue of the fact that we are people here on this earth. And our government officials do not give us these environmental rights. They belong to us, and they can't take them away. But what they can do is, under our system of laws, fail to protect them properly. And that's when we have a problem. But with the constitutional Green Amendment, we start to remedy that problem. We now give constitutional protection to those inherent, inalienable, indefeasible rights that belong to us. We take the most powerful legal documents and structure we have in the United States of America, our state and federal constitutions, and we put them to work for the environment. Because when it comes to the environment and environmental protection, we are entitled. We are entitled to worthy protection. So with that is sort of a broad overview. If you get involved in the Michigan Green Amendment movement, there are more trainings and opportunities to dig in. That's sort of your broad brush overview. Hopefully you found it exciting and you want to learn more, because we have some trainings that Chris and I and the team are planning that will be coming up soon, where we'll dig in even further. Some of the same, you'll hear some of the same stuff, and you'll hear some new stuff. So with that, I wanted to make sure that you knew, of course, we have websites and ways to engage. There is a special Michigan Green Amendment website, migreenamendment.org. We have a petition that we really are hoping people will sign, to help demonstrate to government officials that these environmental rights are important to the people of Michigan. And we also have an online website action platform. If you go to the migreenamendment.org website, you will find a way to get to the online action platform, which is a place and a space where you can engage live and dynamically with other members of the Green Amendment movement, but outside of the seeing eye of the rest of the world. It's like a special safe space for our Green Amendment communities and activists. I am not going to go on to does it really make a difference, because I'm looking at time. Unless Chris says, no, Maya, do it. It's about some of the cases. I'm looking at you, Chris.
You have a little bit of time, so
Okay.
you have
All right.
5 minutes, maybe.
5 minutes. I can do it in 5 minutes. Okay. So people really want to know, does this really make a difference? Yes, it does. And the Held v. Montana case in the climate context is a grand example of how it makes a difference. In the state of Montana, the state legislature had passed a law that prohibited government officials in the state from considering the climate changing ramifications of the actions they were taking and the decisions that they were rendering. And so as a result, they were just running amok, advancing dirty fossil fuels, the extraction, the transportation, the consumption. But in Montana, like I said, that's a Green Amendment state. In the Montana Constitution, the people have a right to a clean and healthful environment. And so this Montana legal action brought by these 16 youth, represented by their attorneys, challenged that prohibition on consideration of the climate crisis and said, look, it is exacerbating growing climate change in a way that is devastating our lives. And our right to a clean and healthful environment includes the right to a safe climate. And after a week-long hearing, with lots of evidence and experts saying that part of a clean and healthful environment includes a safe climate, and that this government prohibition was therefore infringing on the right to a safe climate and infringing on the right to a clean and healthful environment, a judge agreed. Yes, clean and healthful environment includes the right to a safe climate. It is being infringed upon by government action. Therefore, this state law is unconstitutional. And not only does that prohibition against consideration of the climate crisis sort of go away, but now because there is a recognition that a right to a clean and healthful environment includes a safe climate, there now is that duty on government officials in Montana to proactively consider what are the climate changing ramifications of their actions and decisions before they render them. Now, this was the first time where we had a legal case explicitly talking about whether or not the right to a clean and healthy environment includes the climate. But it's not the first victory for the environment, number one. And number two, I do want to highlight for you, one of the beautiful things about, our Michigan language, let's go back there, is you'll see that the right to a stable climate is right up there in section 1 of the new Article 1, Section 29. So we won't even have to spend days and days bringing forth experts to say we have a right to a stable and safe climate. We've included it right in the constitutional amendment. So we can hop over to say, hey, this is what the right to a safe climate means for us in the context of government decision making. So that's really powerful. But there have been many other victories using green amendments in the 3 states that have them. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there was a devastatingly pro-fracking law that was passed. Fracking was already happening in Pennsylvania, but it was going to get exponentially worse because there was automatic waivers from environmental protection standards put in place and all kinds of other horrible things. And as a result, the fracking that was happening again was going to expand exponentially, and it was going to be even more devastating. We grabbed on to the Pennsylvania Green Amendment, the right of the people to pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment, and the duty of our government officials to protect our natural resources generationally. And we said those provisions of that pro-fracking law will violate our Pennsylvania Green Amendment, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed, and those provisions of the law were extracted out. Now, fracking is still happening. It hasn't been stopped based on that victory, but that exponential expansion did not happen. The Green Amendment in Montana has been used to protect sensitive, precious, remote ecosystems from industrial gold mining operations that would have ravaged critical ecosystems and rivers, and also had serious consequences for the ecotourism industry dependent on the clean and healthy environments in Montana, including those around Yellowstone National Park. In Pennsylvania, the Green Amendment has been used by a community to secure enforcement of an existing law that required responsible parties to clean up toxic contamination. There was a supersaturated toxic site called the Bishop Tube site. The government was aware that it was supersaturated with dangerous contaminants that were spreading in groundwater and in the soil, and the state was doing nothing about it. In fact, they were busy negotiating a sweetheart deal with the developer to let the developer develop this toxic site while it was still in its toxic condition. We were able to use the Green Amendment in our advocacy and in our litigation to say, no, state, your failure to enforce that law that's on the books against these responsible parties, which were corporations with big, big bucks, that is resulting in a violation of our environmental rights. And the court agreed, and ultimately the state agreed. And now the Green Amendment in Pennsylvania is ensuring that this site is being remediated. And families like the Stauffer family, and Liz Stauffer there in the red shirt, she suffered serious brain tumors, and the belief is that it was caused by exposures from this toxic site. So that's why we have their picture there. They're now getting protection. In New York State, where there's only been a Green Amendment for a couple of years, already the amendment is being used against industry or against industrial operations and massive landfills, where we have it's not just noxious odors, but hazardous air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions that are being released into the air, having serious consequences for neighboring communities, and where the government is failing to act to ensure that those dangerous air emissions are being addressed, and instead is just allowing the industry to expand. The Green Amendment isn't just being used by people. Often the Green Amendments in Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York have actually been used by government officials, like local town councils, who take seriously their obligation to protect the natural resources of their community and have relied upon the Green Amendment in court and in their decision-making to do better when it comes to environmental protection, including in one community where the Green Amendment was used as the foundation for a municipal decision to protect an old growth forest from being decimated for development. And I'm going to skip because I think now I am getting towards the end. But again, there's the website, migreenamendment.org. Go there. You'll get lots of information and lots of opportunities to engage. And you'll learn about some of the training opportunities that are coming up. And when the Green Amendment language gets proposed, you will know about that too. And with that, I will stop the share and we'll see if there are any questions. And I know that was broad strokes, right? It's a complicated, constitutional law is a complicated issue, but hopefully that gave you an overview that this really is a powerful transformational pathway for environmental protection that we really need to take in Michigan and beyond.
So David, you're tracking the chat. Can you?
I
see
am.
some
First,
questions?
I'd like to say that there are Bridget Brady and others have posted things in the chat with various links. So I advise you to look at the chat and see what's there. Now, there are some questions here. If you don't mind, I'll ask for Kimmy. As I'm understanding, if our Green Amendment is passed, the proof that they are not going to negatively impact has to be proven before they get permitted, correct?
So I think I understand the question. So yeah, whenever government officials are acting, right? Like let's say that a permit is going to be issued for an industrial operation, because you mentioned permit, right? The first place that, you know, the regulatory agency is going to look is they're going to look at the regulations and the legislation that applies to that industrial operation. And very often, you know, the combination of the two says, look, if you're going to have an industrial operation that's placed in this specific location using this specific technology and is releasing XYZ pounds of contamination into the air, into the water, you get a permit. Okay. Well, part of the problem is often when you look at an industrial operation in a particular location, those regulations, those protections, those boxes that they checked may provide a valuable level of protection. But what if there are already 10 other industrial operations operating in that location, spewing that same level of pollution? The cumulative impacts amongst those operations is already intense and overwhelming. Adding an 11th or a 12th or a 13th is now going to result in such a high level of pollution, it rises to the level of being a constitutional violation. When you have a Green Amendment, right, it's not just, does this industrial operation comply? You know, if I check the boxes and the regulation says this industrial operation and this amount of pollution in this location is fine, that's not enough. The Green Amendment requires government to do that extra level of review and say, okay, in context, does this operation in the way it's being proposed ensure that the rights of the people to clean water and clean air are also being protected? So it's sort of this added level of review and protection that has to be considered. If the government officials say, no, the pollution levels are going to be so high, it's going to result in a constitutional violation, then either they have to say no, or maybe they have to put greater protections into that permit. If they say after that added review, nope, we think that this is fine, this is appropriate, it protects the environmental rights, then they go and issue the permit. But the impacted community members might come back and say, you know what? We're an already overburdened community and you just made our lives worse. Even though the laws said it was okay, the Constitution didn't. So they may have the opportunity now to go to court on constitutional grounds and say, look, the legislation and regulation said this permit was fine, but the Constitution and our real lived experience makes clear it isn't. And so they could have the opportunity to change the outcome. Whereas without the Constitution, they'd be pretty much sunk because the law said it was okay, so it's okay. But so that Constitution, yes, it gives that extra level of review that focuses on preventing the harm before it happens.
Thank you. The next one is a question that I put in, and it seems to me that the tricky thing is who defines what is clean and safe? I mean, how is that determined? How do you know that something is infraction?
So that's a great question. And it's actually one of the things we'll hear from the opposition. Oh, this language is so broad. How clean is clean, right? Well, there's sort of two answers to that. First and foremost, the language chosen for the Michigan Green Amendment is appropriate language for that constitutional Bill of Rights context. Actually, all language in the Bill of Rights is pretty broad, right? People are protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. They have the right to speak freely or to free speech. Their religious freedoms are protected. When you look at the language in these other constitutional provisions, you will see that all of them are broad. And that's because that constitutional language has to be able to cover all of the issues associated with that fundamental right, whether it's property, religion, speech, civil rights, or the environment. It has to be able to cover sort of the whole array of issues that we can imagine today, but also can't imagine, right? So it has to also endure through time. So one, that broader language is appropriate for Bill of Rights constitutional placement and is in keeping with the other kinds of broad language you see for other fundamental rights. So that's an assurance I want to give you. But then how do we define these terms, as you said? Well, we defined the terms like clean and stable and safe in the same, from the environmental rights perspective, in the same way we define the broad terminology in other constitutional provisions. The first to take a crack at it is the legislature. They work to pass laws to fulfill their duty to protect the right to clean water. So they first help try to define how clean is clean through a series of laws. And then there are regulations which further refine what the broad language. So you have the really broad language in the Constitution. You then have broad language in the legislation, but it is more refined, more defined for floodplains, for rivers, for the ocean, for different segments, for the groundwater. And then you have the next level. Then the administrative agencies get involved and they pass regulations to try to give further definition to what that term clean means in a specific context on that more granular level. And then you have permits and specific decisions. And now the regulators say, okay, the regulations say this is what clean means. And so I'm going to apply it to this specific facility in this specific location based on how I'm reading the law. And if everybody's done a good job, and they've also thought about the constitutional right of the people, then they will render decisions and there'll be good outcomes and people say, great, legislators, regulators, permitters, you got it right. You protected our environment and our environmental rights. But if the people think that they got it wrong because they've brought forth facts and science and lived experience that proves that in this context, look, the water's already so contaminated, you're like ruining it, or what the toxins that are going to be spewed out of this facility in this location is overwhelming. And the science shows us this is a problem. Well, then the people have the opportunity to go to court. And then the courts will get involved and they will use standard principles of legal interpretation and constitutional interpretation to help figure out whether or not the law or the regulation or the permit, whatever's that issue, has in fact ensured the environmental rights have been protected or haven't. That is how the process works for every other fundamental right. Property rights, the right to bear arms, free speech, all those other fundamental rights. That's how it works. All we're saying is we want that same process that has proven successful in every single other context of fundamental rights. We want that same process to now apply for the environment as well. And it will, and it does. And it has in Pennsylvania and Montana and New York, and the legislators and the regulators and the courts have been able to very effectively and successfully use that pre-existing democratic process and apply it to the environment. Right? So it's a long-winded answer, but that's the way democracy works. And we just want it to work for the environment as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. I've got a couple more questions here. When do you think it might be brought to a vote in Michigan?
Well, we're waiting, we need to have it proposed by a legislator, and the advocates in Michigan are working on that. So there is hope that within the coming weeks that there will actually be a proposal by a legislator, and then it will have to go through the process. It'll have to pass through the committee level, and then it will have to go through both legislative houses. And then if it passes by the appropriate number of votes there, then it can hop over to the people. So the truth is, I can't really answer that. It's really going to depend upon the active engagement of the legislators and the people of the state of Michigan. But we're never going to finish if we don't start. So we're starting.
I have another question, kind of a follow-up on that, is how hard is the fossil fuel industry fighting this in Michigan? Do you have?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. So in all the, dozen and a half states where we're working, industry tends to be relatively quiet in their opposition, because I think even they understand how stupid they look by saying, well, you or your kids don't have a right to drink clean water. Me, meaning them, and my family, my mother, my dog, my neighbors, they don't have we don't want them to have clean water, clean, healthy water to drink. I think, it's very unsavory to take that kind of position. Nonetheless, we do see it happen. They try to find intricate ways to say it, like this language is too broad, or it's going to result in frivolous lawsuits. All these sort of red herring arguments is sort of what they use to cover their opposition, so they don't look silly, but even their arguments are silly. Anyway, but they do start to come out when we have hearings. And yes, the industry most vocal at the hearings in New Mexico, in Washington, and other states has been the oil and gas industry. So I will expect that to continue. And of course, they have a lot more money than we all do, but we have a lot more heart and a lot more people power. So I'm confident we will win.
All right. Thank you again. I have a few more questions. We're running out of time. Are we good? Shall we keep going?
I'll stay as long as you want me to.
So Kimmy asks, who has the responsibility for burden of proof?
For the burden of proof. So when you, in the first instance, right, it's the government officials have to be able to demonstrate that they've complied with their constitutional obligation. But it is true, when you go into that courtroom, right, the people in that process are going to have to bring forth evidence to demonstrate that you believe that there's a constitutional violation. So it's a little bit of both, but it really is ultimately on the government officials to demonstrate that they considered the constitutional rights of the people, that they fulfilled their constitutional obligation to ensure those rights were protected, and then to, demonstrate the steps that they took. So there's an incredible onus on the government to really come forth in defense of their actions or inactions, because ultimately the constitutional obligation falls to them. But you will have to, in your legal arguments, you will have to be able to bring forth, a good case and good faith statements and demonstration of a violation.
Thank you. Here's one from David Fraker. Is there a risk of this being used by NIMBYs as another tool to tie up green energy, transmission, and other useful and urgent development projects?
So first off, that really comes down to a misuse of it, to me, is frivolous litigation, right? So if somebody's bringing a legal argument that really is not grounded in appropriate facts or law, it's frivolous and it can get thrown out. There are lots of limitations on pursuing frivolous litigation. Judges or lawyers can suffer sanctions and impacts to their law license and certainly their reputation. So we don't see, in the constitutional context, we don't see frivolous litigation as a thing that happens. We don't see it when it comes to speech or property or those other fundamental rights. So we wouldn't expect to see it for the environment, number one. Number two, in the 3 states that have a Green Amendment, there have been no frivolous lawsuits that have been dismissed that were brought based on the Green Amendment. They're just zero. Every legal argument that has been brought has been to address serious issues of significant and meaningful concern. Now, they haven't all won, but that doesn't mean that they were frivolous. There were really serious issues at play. Now, when it comes to clean and renewable energy, we have to, and that industry has come out in opposition, much to my surprise, and they do so based on sort of red herring arguments and or a misunderstanding of how the amendment will actually help them. So one, right, we have to remember that there is the right in the Green Amendment to a stable climate. And there is an obligation to protect natural resources generationally. And all the natural resources and environmental rights that are articulated in the proposed Michigan Green Amendment are actually adversely impacted by the climate crisis. So there is under the Constitution an obligation constitutionally for government officials to advance efforts and solutions that help protect environmental rights and protect natural resources. In the energy context, that necessarily builds in support for clean energy, right? Number one. Number two, we have to remember that not all clean energy projects are the same. They're not all good. I mean, I've seen and actually challenged, not on Green Amendment grounds, it was in a non-Green Amendment state, but for example, a solar array where they were going to cut down hundreds of acres of forest along a stream in order to build solar panels when the builder of the solar panels owned right next door grasslands where they could have built this solar array. So wrong project, wrong place. If there had been a Green Amendment in place, maybe there would have been a Green Amendment challenge. And maybe what would have happened is the local officials and the state officials, when reviewing that proposal, thinking about the environmental rights protections in the Green Amendment, would have said earlier on, look, wrong place, wrong project in the wrong place. You are going to unnecessarily infringe on the natural resources of our state, on the health of the waterways next door, impacting downstream communities. You need to reconsider that placement so that you can build your solar array, but also ensure that the natural resources of our state are protected. So not every Green Amendment project should be free, right, from vigilant review. And actually a Green Amendment can help make sure that review happens earlier so solutions can be brought forth earlier. Now, that being said, if you do have a good clean energy project, it is a good project, it's good placement, it's a good proposal, yes, there may be environmental ramifications. Well, then if there's a legal challenge to, let's say, the permit that was issued for that, the state might be able to come in against that legal challenge and say, listen, we know there are going to be environmental ramifications, but we have a constitutional obligation to address the climate crisis, to protect all of these natural resources. We looked at the constitutional obligation. We looked at this green energy project. And while there are going to be environmental impacts, either those impacts don't rise high enough to warrant a constitutional challenge, or maybe they do. But under constitutional law, we are allowed to infringe on the right, in this case, the environmental rights, if we can demonstrate, one, that there's a compelling state interest, climate crisis is that, and two, we took the steps necessary to minimize that infringement. In the case of that solar array, maybe it would be move the solar array over. several hundred yards. And if the government can show that they did their constitutional review and did all of this fair-minded analysis and came to this outcome, then in that case, the amendment could actually be used to fend off a challenge in defense of the project. So all the way around, if you have a bad project, the Green Amendment can help remedy it early on before there was a lot of investment of resources. If you have a good project, the Green Amendment can help make sure that every aspect of it was considered. So it really is the best project. And that if there were a legal challenge, it could be defended against that. All of that being said, we are not seeing green amendments being used against green energy projects. There is not. There is lots of green energy advancing in Pennsylvania and Montana and New York State, and we're simply not seeing that kind of litigation. So all the way around, it's a bit of a red herring. So there you go.
David, I'm going to stop you right there for just a minute. So Maya, this is good. I know that we usually end at 8 o'clock, but we can keep going for, if it's all right with you, for another few minutes. David, I don't know how many questions you've got there. For those who want to stay on.
Got one more question.
Okay.
So maybe we can.
Okay, we've had a few people drop off because we are used to closing at 8, but this is so interesting. I mean, majority of people have stayed. So let's go on and we'll finish with the next question and go from there. Okay, if that's all right with you, Maya.
Yeah, you could
okay.
tell. I'm
All right.
happy to talk about it, and I understand it's a complicated issue and the answers can be long, but hopefully they're informative.
No, that's very informative, definitely.
The last one is from Bruce Odom, and he asked, what does it not cover? For example, if I want to open a car dealership, would it be argued that I sell cars that pollute the environment? Or permitting any business that is dependent on emitting carbon, could be any business, restaurant, a goat farm, a sauna. What would the impact be?
Yeah, so, a constitutional infringement is a high bar. Right. And so we do hear arguments like that. Oh, it's not going to let me cut down the tree in my backyard, or my neighbor is not going to, I swear this has been said, my neighbor is not going to be able to have a barbecue anymore because the barbecue smells. I mean, these are silly arguments, right? We don't see this kind of abuse in the other context. If a government official is walking down the hallway and tells somebody to shut up, well, you might say, oh boy, you just infringed on my constitutional right to free speech. You're a government official and you told me to shut up. But we don't see that kind of abuse of constitutional claims, right? Lawyers don't want to bring frivolous lawsuits, number one. Number two, to demonstrate a constitutional infringement is the high bar. So no, having a single business that emits, results in emissions in a particular location, like the car idea. I think anybody who would try to bring a legal challenge against the approvals for that business, and remember, this is not neighbor versus neighbor. You're not going to be, if you're a private business owner or a private property owner, nobody's going to be bringing a constitutional challenge against you. That's not how this amendment works. This is about government action. So the person would have to find the government action that was resulting in behavior that rose to the level of a constitutional violation. In the case of the car dealership, maybe there's a permit that had to be issued for the construction of the dealership in this location to sell cars. So you would be challenging that approval. And I think that anybody sort of bringing that kind of challenge would have a really hard time demonstrating that their violations that action standing alone rose to the constitutional level of violation. Instead, what you would really be looking for is, something like we saw in that Pennsylvania pro-fossil fuel case that I mentioned. That was a case where it was not about permitting a single fracking operation. It was about a law that preempted all local zoning and mandated that fracking operations be allowed to operate within 300 feet from people's homes by virtue of this state law. So you're talking about a massive array of fracking operations suddenly being approved across Pennsylvania in all the places and spaces where that kind of fracking could happen. That kind of, large scale impact from a single government decision. That's where you see the Constitution really come into play. That prohibition in Montana, you can't consider the climate crisis in any permitting decision the state is making, right? That when you look at a single permitting decision, a single facility, a single operation standing on its own, you're going to have a hard time, with a straight face saying that's a constitutional problem. But when you look at the big scale, right now, that cumulative impact is where you start to see it rise to a constitutional level. Now, and even in that old growth forest case that I talked about, right, that was not a situation where there was a legal challenge. That was a situation where the local community said, look, this is our last piece of green space. This is an old growth forest next to like the only high quality stream we have in our community. It was a rare old beech tree forest. So you cut that down, it's gone, right? So that's like a different kind of big impact because it was the last piece and then it's gone and you're not going to get that back. But even there, it wasn't the result of, there wasn't a legal challenge. There were people going to their community leaders and saying, last piece of green space, old growth forest, we're not going to get it back. You have a constitutional duty to protect our natural resources for present and future generations. And our future generations will never get to enjoy an old beech tree forest of this kind in this whole region if you let that be cut down. And then the community officials said, you're right. We have this duty as trustee to protect natural resources. We're going to say no. And what that decision did was it actually then created space for the community to come together around an initiative where that parcel was actually purchased for public natural open space. And we had this really good positive outcome. But even there, the big picture ramification, yes, maybe it was just, a couple hundred acres. Well, that's a lot of old growth forest, but it was the last piece, right? So you're talking about big impacts, not single operations like that. But that is the kind of red herring argument that we will hear. And you need to be prepared to say, look, let's be reasonable about this, right? We don't see abuses like that in other constitutional contexts. We don't expect to see them for the environment. And if we did, our judicial system gives judges the ability to just say no. This doesn't rise to a constitutional violation. I say no.
You got a good response. Thanks from Bruce. And I think
Thanks, Bruce.
that might wrap up our chat questions. I did skip a couple, but I think they were answered in the chat or in other answers that you gave. So Jan, you want to take over?
So let's give her a pause or with your little hands. I guess we're supposed to go like this, however on chat. Like this.
Oh, wait, ready?
It's fantastic.
Let's see. Ah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, very good. I certainly learned a lot, and I expect everyone here did too. Even if you've been involved in the Green Amendment in some it is just so much. It's so it's just there's so many pieces to it, and you did a good job in explaining as much as we could handle, probably. And the circumstances under the time period, you were comprehensive, and we do appreciate all the time you gave it to us. And you certainly people that are on board now with knowing what the so.
Well, I appreciate all of you. I hope you go to the website. I hope you sign the letter of support, and I, hope you get involved. So, and thank you so much, Chris and Jan, for this opportunity. David, for the questions, and everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. And Nancy, I saw the little kudos at one point. I appreciated that. You did it at exactly the right moment.
Just wanted to amplify your message.
Great,
Okay,
great job,
thank you
Maya.
everyone
Thank you
for
so much.
coming. Thank you. Remember, next month is on soil and with Dr. Bird. So
Good night,
fits
everyone.
right in with this.
Thank you so much, Maya, and good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.